Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. With me in this episode, I have the author of Quiet Voice, Fearless Leader, 10 Principles for Introverts to Awaken the Leader Inside. Terrance Lee, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you for having me. Excited to be here.
Appreciate you coming on the show as well, and it's always good to have people with good leadership qualities, which obviously you came across, and I wouldn't say accidentally, but obviously something that you didn't expect to be in, really, I suppose, at a young age. So it's like myself. I look at myself as a 7-year-old or 13-year-old like yourself and think, wow, I did all this in my life, I guess you could as well, because you had an incident when you was 13 years old when all this happened. We're going to talk about your book afterwards. So before that, let's just have the build up to this story, your backstory, before it led to this incident and how you became the leader, as you're dubbed, the introvert leader. So let's have a backstory into that incident with 13 and how it led you to become the introvert leader, leading on to your book.
Yeah. So, I like to start kind of from the beginning. So, I was a kid that grew up moving around a lot. My dad was an accountant, so we took a lot of different jobs in different cities. And so I grew up moving, 5 different times. And so I'd be in these new schools and meeting, new kids. And I was very outgoing in the beginning, all the way up to the age of 13. I was the kid that was the first one to raise my hand in class if the teacher had a question. Okay. I was always making new friends because we were moving so much, so I was, pretty social.
So this is what age range around that time?
Yeah, so this is all the way up to about 12 years old. 12 and then 13 is when I had an incident that, really changed that.
All right, okay. So tell us about that then. So
yeah.
you're now this outgoing kid, 12 years old, you just turned 13, still being the same until...
Yes. So when I was 13, I was in the 7th grade, and at the time, I loved singing. My mom was actually a choir director at our church, and I enjoyed writing songs and, writing short stories and singing. I was just really, into like arts and literature, things like that. And so I was in a choir at school, and, me and the choir director that I had at the time, we just had a very contentious relationship. It just never seemed like I could do anything right. I would try to hit certain notes, and, she would call me out in front of the class and have me redo it. And that carried on for a while. And so one particular day, I was in choir and we started singing, the soprano section sung, then the altos, then my section was the tenors. And when it got to my section, I was really trying to impress her, so I just started singing, loud, really wanted to hit the notes the way she wanted and everything. And she stopped the music and she slammed the piano cover down and was very visibly upset. And in front of all the kids in the class, she looked at me and pointed, and she said, "Terrance Lee, you are off key. You need to stop singing." All right.
Right.
And the other kids that were in the choir with me, I could hear some of the kids behind me laughing, cracking jokes, things like that. And she started playing the music again, and I didn't sing. I just basically sat there, with my head down, kind of, it was very embarrassing, right? Especially middle school, if you think about that age, 13, 14, kids tease each other, crack jokes on each other, right? So it was a very tough moment. And that night, all of my composition books, everything that I had, where I'd been writing songs and writing all these different things, I threw them all away.
Wow.
Yeah, and really from that day, things changed. I didn't want to raise my hand in class anymore. I wouldn't go to the board and answer any questions. I would sit in the back of the class as opposed to in the front. It really changed the trajectory of kind of who I was. And I started to really doubt myself in a lot of ways. And so, that really carried in from middle school, then into high school and into college. And people would, refer to me as laid back or quiet. And if there were certain leadership roles or opportunities to, speak in front of the class or something, I would never do it. I just would sit in the back and kind of stay to myself. And so eventually, that led to my career. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering
Yeah.
and started working in the defense industry.
Oh
And
wow.
over time, what's interesting is people started to notice and tell me they saw leadership potential in me, which I just didn't get because to me, I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'm this quieter, introverted guy. Why do you think I'm a leader? That doesn't make sense to me. But I started to get certain roles and certain opportunities to be in leadership at various companies I was at, and I actually did really well, and things went well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started to get compliments about my leadership style. And so, now today I'm a program manager at a Fortune 500 company with a large team that, I manage and lead. And, so really that's kind of starting from the beginning and to where I am now. And really my whole point is to just show people with introverted personalities that they can lead, they can be successful, and they can actually use their introversion as a strength.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think with leadership skills, I mean, it's not so much just standing up and being the loudest voice or anything like that. Really, there's other qualities. I mean,
Right.
it's like you lead by example, so everyone's kind of doing something that you shouldn't be doing, but you kind of set the example by saying, no, you do it like this. And you don't even, I mean, it's like Gandhi, I suppose. He didn't really, he didn't use violence or anything like that to get what he needed and things like that. It's kind of, when you think of leadership, it is a quiet way of doing, there is a quiet way of doing it, isn't there? When you look at all that.
Absolutely.
And even Martin Luther King, I mean, obviously he did obviously have a speech and a voice, but the fact is that it spread around the world. People who didn't know him, was just hearing about him, because of the actions he took. And certainly you must have took some actions and shown some qualities, to really, for that to be picked up upon. So I'm sure you've written about those things in your book anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, and you said something very interesting about how there's this misperception that the person that's loud or the person that talks the most is a leader or they're a strong leader. When in reality, leadership abilities and leadership strength has nothing to do with being the loudest person in the room. It's really
yeah,
about, can you make sound decisions? Can you be calm under pressure? Can you lead a team through trials? Like there are so many different
exactly, yeah.
related to leadership that regardless of if you're a extrovert or an introvert, those are things you need to be able to do. So I think that's just a big misperception a lot of people have.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's just go back to when you hid all your books and now you've put it all away. What kind of made you? I mean, I suppose you went for the engineering stuff, not knowing you wanted to be a leader. So you just went for the engineering job. I know that can be a kind of, it can be solo, but there is teamwork involved in that as well. I mean, I've worked as a firefighter, but there is a fire engineering department. And you can be either on your own and do stuff, but you also need a team around you to to get
Yep.
whatever need to solve problems and things like that, which I'm sure you had to do as well in the defence. So when did you think you picked up on, oh, I'm a leader? When did that kind of epiphany come?
Yeah, so it's something, to be honest, that people really told me. I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't necessarily looking to be a leader. I didn't think I had that ability for a long
Yeah,
time. And one pivotal moment was in my first engineering role at a school. My mentor at the time, who was mentoring me on a certain capability on the aircraft, he put in his 2-week notice, and there was a big
yeah.
presentation that was coming up. And when he put in that 2-week notice, I was told that I was going to have to give the presentation that he would have given. And it was
How did that feel when you got told that?
it was
Must
nerve
be mixed
wracking.
feelings.
It
Nerve
was nerve
wracking, but
wracking.
also a good feeling of, oh, you felt like there was a good position to be in, or just nerve wracking only?
It was mainly nerve wracking.
Right.
Now,
Fear,
and
fear of
honestly,
speaking, I don't know.
that's exactly what it was. Like for
Yeah,
anyone else, it would have probably been like, man, this is my shot. I get to present in front of this group of very, very smart people, make a name for myself. Whereas for me, because of the lack of confidence that I had in my ability to speak and the way I viewed myself, for me, it was like, oh my God, like I'm going to make a fool out of myself. I'm not ready for this. Those were all of the thoughts. And what's interesting, and he was amazing because the next 2 weeks that he was there, he taught me everything he could about, anything I'd have to know for that presentation. There was also a lady named Robbie Vaughn. She was a big help as well, getting me prepared. And I did a presentation. I was very nervous, but after I started, it went extremely well. And I got a lot of compliments on that. And people told me, hey, Terrance, you did a great job. You were so calm and everything. And from that moment, that's what changed the trajectory. And that's when I began to realize, like, okay, well, maybe I can lead. Maybe I can talk in front of people. And so that was kind of the catalyst for, I'd say, everything going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got distracted there. I left my phone and I just suddenly realized making some noise. So,
Oh, no worries.
yeah, no. Well, let's move on anyway from that. So that's great. So, tell us now that transition from that moment where you now took that speaking role on that presentation role. So it is an aerodynamics. That's kind of your engineering background, really, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of more like aero and in the defense industry. So various defense products.
Yeah. That's quite serious, really, to be leading in those kind of products, really. So where did it go from there? We're going to lead up to your book in a minute and then talk about the book. So where did it go to get to where you are now?
Yeah. So I was in that role for about 8 years on that particular team, and so I started out as an individual contributor. Ended up becoming a lead system engineer for one of the aircraft capabilities. So that was, really a big deal. After that, I went to another company where I was a system engineer. And then after that, I got my first kind of significant leadership role, which was as a technical lead for a ISR aircraft program in Greenville, Texas. And so in that role, I was responsible for technical leadership of around 40 engineers. So I really learned a lot about myself in that role. I thought the role was too big for me. Again, I was doubting myself. I didn't think I was ready. And we actually delivered all of our aircraft on time. We had a lot of kudos and a lot of praise from the customer about, the execution of our program. So that went very well. And since then, I'm now at a company, Raytheon, which is in the defense industry as a program manager. So I manage a $30 million program there, and have a number of engineers, finance, contracts leads that I work with, coordinate with, and it's very exciting. I love what I do, and it is. It can be stressful at times, but at the same time, I love the fact that as someone with a more introverted personality, I'm able to affect change, and I'm able to help other people to get to where they're trying to go. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. So what led you on to write this book then? I mean, obviously it probably is self-explanatory from the story you read now, and the title of the book. But you tell us, why you wrote this book.
Yeah, great question. So, for me, quiet voice, fearless leader, I realized as I started to get into these different leadership roles that I knew there were other people out there like me. That there were other people out there that thought that they had to be a louder voice in order to lead, or they think that they have to be an extrovert to be successful. They think that, well, I'm too shy, I'm too introverted, my personality is just not that way. So, I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself. I'm not going to speak up, or I'm not going to try to be a leader. And I know there are people out there like that because that's how I was for a very long time.
Okay.
And so quiet voice, fearless leader is not about trying to change introverts into being something they're not, because that's a big misperception. A lot of people think that introverts have to be somebody else. The reality is introverts can be exactly who they are, but it is about honing certain skills and learning what is leadership and how do I step into that. And so that's really what it's about. It's just a book to empower introverts to grow as the leaders they can be, but it's also to educate extroverts on how to better work well with introverts and how to create environments where introverts can thrive. So that's really what it's about.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, really, I think I looked at all this a long time ago, and one thing I came across was that introverts nothing to do with really not being able to work with other people or shyness or anything like that. It's just where you get your energy from. You know, some people prefer to be, you know, in that cave and just get group, but then they'll go back to the team and say, "This is here's what I'm coming up with." Other people want to be around other people and blah blah blah. They're on their own. That's why some people suffered during the lockdown because they couldn't cope with. You know, introverts actually quite flexible. They can probably do both, you know, but they want to, if they really want to work and do stuff on their own, they need to get quiet time to do it. You know, and other people, they can't survive like that, you know, and they're extroverts that can't, you know, their energy was suffering during the lockdown. So, but anyway, there we go. So, we'll leave you to talk about that. So let's move on to your book then. So when was it published?
So the book was published on October 27th last year. So we just hit 3 months actually yesterday of the book.
Yeah, it's relatively new then. It's pretty new still. So it's called Quiet Voice, Fearless Leader, 10 Principles for Introverts to Awaken the Leader Inside. So we'll have a little overview of these 10 principles, really. I mean, I've got your website up, but I haven't really looked at the book itself. I know you give away your first chapter free on your website. And you've got an audio book, which is good for people with dyslexia like myself, and of course other people that obviously, you know, don't or can't read it, you know, so by text. So let's dive into the book and get an overview so people get a taste of what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the book, I did want to weave in parts of my story with the book because I think it's very important that people know that I'm not perfect and that I make mistakes and I've gone through things along my journey. So really the book weaves in lessons from my personal story, and then it incorporates lessons about leadership. And so, you know, every chapter is a different leadership principle. So chapter 1, we start with value. So how do introverts add value to a room? Chapter 2, we get into courage, which talks about the importance of decision making. How do you make effective decisions as a leader? You know, chapter 3, we talk about trust. How do you build trust? How do you get your team to trust you as the leader? And how do you trust your team, right? And in every one of these chapters, we have the core principle, but then we get into 3 pillars of that principle. So, for example, with, you know, value, courage, and trust, there are 3 pillars attached to each one of those. And then at the end of each chapter, we close with an action plan, because one thing that I'm very big on is action. I didn't want people to read this book and they say, "Oh, that was nice. That was a nice read." And then they kind of put it to the side. That I really want to give actionable steps that as someone's reading through the book, they can be taking action on these things, you know, every day when they go to work or in their business. So that's really the outline. And, you know, the remainder of the chapters, we have a number of different topics where, you know, we talk about everything from being authentic, in terms of just being your authentic self and being comfortable with that, to tips for speaking. A lot of people struggle with, how do I not get nervous when I'm speaking in front of people? How do I, you know, speak up and use my voice when I'm more introverted? And one of the things that's really key and a big takeaway that I want people to know is that fear is actually okay. It's not that you're never going to get nervous. I still get nervous sometimes when I'm going to give a big presentation. But the difference is you recognize what that fear is and you choose to fight through that hurdle and get through it. And so we give tips about how do you do that? You know, when the nervousness comes, what are some things you can do? Tips like controlling your breathing, tips like your self-talk. What can you say to yourself to calm yourself down, right? So we get into very actionable things in the book. So it's not just, you know, here's leadership and here's some theory. It's very actionable steps for how you can get to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. And is it quite a big action plan? Or, I mean, I've written a book myself a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago. It's bullet points. It's really a handbook, really. It's not so much a really in-depth read, just a short read, really. But it's just bullet points at the end of each chapter, you know, 2-3 pages of the chapter. Is yours like that, or is yours kind of a kind of thorough action plan, but not too deep?
Yeah, so it's kind of, you know, there's the chapter, right? And then at the very end, the action plan, it's based on each pillar. So for each principle, there's the 3 leadership pillars. And then there's an action step for each one of those pillars. And, you know, each one of those action plans is, you know, maybe 3 to 4 sentences. And there's actually a free workbook that goes along with the book as well. So
Okay.
people are able to get access to that. At the end of the first chapter, I give people a link to where they can download the free workbook. And the
Okay.
workbook allows you to follow along and write down
Yeah.
notes with all the action plans. So that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I added that as well.
Oh, that's quite good actually. Yeah. Excellent. So let's go through these 10 overview of these 10 areas, 10 principles for introverts to awaken the leader inside. I'm sure it'll be, like you say, it can apply to anyone, including extroverts, but obviously specifically aiming it at introverts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for value, when we talk about how do you add value to the room, right? So
That's number
you know,
one. Yeah.
yeah, that's the first chapter. Yep. And
Okay. Yeah. Because I haven't got the book in front of me. So
okay, good. Yep, yep. So yeah, that one is really big because that just speaks to a lot of times in meetings. I used to feel like, well, how do I add value to this conversation? Or I would have something to say, but I would stop myself from saying it. So how do you actually get the courage to say what you have to say? And so one of the things we talk about in that chapter is just first acknowledging that your voice is important and recognizing that what you have to say is something that can totally change the room and change the conversation. So it really starts with that confidence. And we talk about that. And then we talk about how to establish presence when you're in that room as an introvert. And it's not by being the loudest person, you know?
yeah.
So we get into tips about how you can do that. And then chapter 2 is about courage. And so just, with decision making, a lot of times in leadership, decision making is very hard. It's one of the skills that I believe as a good leader, you have to be able to do, because if you can't make solid decisions for your team, it's going to be very hard to lead well. And so how do you know how to make the right decision? We get into the tips about that throughout that chapter. And then chapter 3 is trust. And so we're just talking about how do you build trust with your team? And because it's so important and it's something that it's not done overnight. I mean, it takes time to build trust, to build relationships, for you to trust your team as well. And so we get into the tips, of how that's done. And then chapter 4 is accountability, and just the importance of being accountable and not making excuses and not creating an environment where people feel like, there can just always be an excuse. It's, hey, if there's a mission that needs to be done, how do you create an environment as a leader where people know that, hey, this is our mission and we're accountable to that mission, right? And so we get into the tips of that. Chapter 5 is humility. And so this one is really big because a lot of people think that you have to have it all together. They think that you can't make mistakes, or they think that you have to have a certain, again, kind of personality, maybe more loud, more boisterous. And in this chapter, we talk about the importance of being humble as a leader, the importance of realizing it's not all about you. It's really about serving your team, and so we talk about the importance of humility. And then chapter 6 is authenticity. So that's just all about being your authentic self. Sometimes as introverts, we think we have to be somebody else. We don't think we can keep our personality and have success. And so chapter 6, we get into actionable steps for how to grow in your authenticity, how to feel like your authentic self. And then chapter 7 is collaboration. Sometimes as introverts, we want to be to ourselves. We don't maybe want to collaborate or want to work with other people because we do enjoy our alone time. But, to a degree, we do have to learn to collaborate and delegate tasks to people and learn how to work as a team. So how do we do that and maintain our introversion? And so that's what chapter 7 gets into.
Right. Yeah.
And then chapter 8, spoke on that some, but that's really the public speaking tips. That's actually one of the longest chapters in the book. Because that's one of the things that, I struggled with the most. So I really want to give a lot of practical advice there. And then chapter 9 is service. We get into the importance of being a servant leader, not just making things about you climbing up the corporate ladder or getting where you're trying to go, but really serving other people.
Which is what you did initially, wasn't it? It wasn't about you trying to climb the corporate ladder. That's what you were expecting it, was you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. So, we get into that. And then chapter 10 is effort. And so it's really in the last chapter, we end the book with just the importance of putting your best foot forward and just always doing the best that you can. Because regardless of if you're an introvert or an extrovert, if you're providing maximum value and maximum effort, then you're going to do well. And we just get into the importance of that, tips for that, and how to make that happen.
Yeah, wow. Well, now hearing all this, I can see why you're called the introvert leader after having this chat with you now. But certainly, like as we say, a leader's a leader, irrespective. As I said, it comes in all kinds of personalities, really, don't they? So, that's something people should really start looking at as well. So that's great. So, tell us where people can. I see on your website people can download the first free copy, and you did mention about also having a workbook. There's some free resources as well. Tell us more. You've got speaking services, you do coaching as well. Tell us more about what you're doing now, what you're up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, definitely pushing, the book, Quiet Voice, Fearless Leader. People can pick that up on my website, quietvoicefearlessleader.com. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audio. I also am doing speaking engagements. So, I'm available to speak to different organizations, and, the ability to book me is on my website. So it's under quietvoicefearlessleader.com/speaking. And I'm also doing one-on-one coaching as well. So if people want to get in touch with me, if anyone is an introvert looking to scale up in their career or their business, or they're just looking to break out of their shell or figure out what is the next step they need to take to grow in their leadership, people can schedule one-on-one calls with me to walk through that as well on my website. So yeah, that's really what we're doing. We're, just bringing awareness to the book and the movement. And also people, like I said earlier, they can get the free workbook that goes along with the book as well on my website too.
Yeah. Wow. Great stuff. So where can everyone go to find out more about all this, to get hold of you and find out more?
Yeah. So the best way to connect with me is on social media. So on Instagram, I'm at the Introvert Leader. I'm also on Facebook at the Introvert Leader, and Twitter, I'm at Introvert Lead. And I'm very active on social. So definitely anyone there, feel free to connect with me. I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, so it's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also your website. And fantastic. And what are you up to these days? Are you still an engineer leader doing the aerodynamic stuff, defense stuff? Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm a program manager at Raytheon, and so I've been in that particular role now for about 8 months, and I'm loving it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but I enjoy being busy, so it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So I'm taking it that with the coaching, they can do this online anyway from anywhere in the world, I guess. Really, can't they? Well, as long as you're awake, So if they're calling from Australia, So it's mostly online, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely,
as opposed to speaking. So
that's correct. Yeah, and even with this, I've had a few virtual speaking engagements.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. That's big. That's gone big.
Connect on Zoom, and I did an engagement a few weeks ago like that. So the coaching, speaking, everything I'm able to do virtually. So
yeah, it's actually a lot of shift has been online actually with this kind of world of stuff. And I'm in the same sphere as you, but obviously as a firefighter, my book's called Firefighting from Within. So saying it's more the qualities rather than that kind of thing. But dealing with more the resilience and stuff like that, because you can imagine what you have to face. So it's I'm just finalise my coaching services and stuff like that as well. I'm trying to get to speak like yourself, so I'm sure you can give me some tips there, or I'll read your book. Maybe that might help me with the public speaking side. So
absolutely, I'd love to help.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Terrance, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show and to speak to you. I know it's always great to have a variety of people. I have a diverse people with all kinds of value to share, and it really is valuable what you've shared today on the show. I really appreciate that for my listeners and audience, or anyone listening, really. Yeah,
thank you. I really appreciate this. This has been great, Dave, and I just thank you for having me on.
You're welcome, Terrance. So once again, thanks for coming on the Dave Palmer Show.
All right, thank you.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.